ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नः तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः देवं नारायणं नत्वा सर्वदोषविवर्जितं परिपूर्णं गुरुंश्चान् गीतार्थमक्ष्यामि लेशतः. So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for friends who have joined for Gita Chinthana today. We are doing chapter 9 led by Harish Ji and team. Over to you, Harish. I'll stop sharing my slides.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone for the chapter 9 Gita Chinthana. So I'm joined here with with the team. I have Srikanji and Shobhaji with me. Pratibha is joining us. I know she's traveling, but she's been able to join us as well. I know Deval is in travel, but you'll probably hear from her, and Pawan is also here. So let me open up the presentation, and we can dive right into it. Okay, so in the first session, so we're going to do as part of 3 sessions, the chapter 9. We did a very brief introduction the last time when we were wrapping up chapter 8, but we'll do a little bit more context and introduction today. And the focus will be on shlokas 1 through 15, where a lot of the discussion is around understanding, our Lord, the Janmadi Ashtaka, the eightfold cosmic dispensation, understanding the types of devotees and ways of worship, and all is actually setting the stage for bhakti, because ultimately, this whole shatka that we will see is about understanding the Lord and developing bhakti, and this is setting the stage, for that. Now, a lot of what was discussed in chapter 7, has already established that foundation. What chapter 9 does is do more of an elaboration and clarification on that. In fact, I mentioned before that Acharya said that the focus on chapter 9 is continuing chapter 7 with more prapanchayati and spashtayati, expansion and clarification. So that's what we're going to be doing. And it uses a slightly different perspective for a deeper understanding. Now, Sri Krishna reveals the royal secret that bhakti ultimately, if you have to summarize what we are discussing in chapter 9, it is that the bhakti is the supreme path to realize the divine, and it is accessible to all seekers. And devotion with faith, love, and humility will grant us his divine protection and lead us to him. So that is the summary, but there's going to be a lot of detail and interesting teachings that is going to come along the way. So after we finish the chapter 15, and again, just a recap, our next week is when we're going to have a guest speaker, Dr. Purna Prasad, who's going to join us and talk to us about some of the key aspects of chapter 9. And then we'll wrap it up the week after that, December 14th, right before we break for the holidays. So that's the plan to cover this in 3 sessions. So where does this chapter 9 sit within the context of Bhagavad Gita? So we have 18 chapters within Bhagavad Gita. The first shatka is called the sadhana upasana, and then the second shatka is where we do the sadhya or the upasya. Upasya means the one that we are doing sadhana for or doing the upasana for. So it describes the supreme qualities. We have the vibhuti of the Lord, the vaibhava of the Lord, the mahima of the Lord in the spiritual and the material dimension. So that's what the focus of this shatka is. And within that, we've already done the Jnana Vijnana Yoga chapter, and now the focus is right in the center, which is the Raja Vidya Raja Guhya. And it's called the Raja Vidya Raja Guhya because in this chapter, the Lord emphasizes about that one final ingredient to make him reveal himself to all genuine seekers who have true jignasa to reach him. And that is the part that makes it royal. And it's called the royal secret because it's the supreme secret about the supreme being who is full of infinite auspicious qualities and is faultless. And that point reminds you of the Mangalacharana of the Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya. It says Sadagamaika Vigneyam Samatita Ksharaksharam Narayanam Sadavande Nirdosha Shesha Sadgunam. So that he's full of auspicious attributes and is free from all blemishes. So diving into it, so the first sloka, he is sharing this, he gives a bit of a preview of what he's going to be sharing with Arjuna. So he says, Idam te guhyatamam pravakshyami anusuyave jnanam vijnana saitam yech gnatva mokshase shubhat. So let's focus on, why is this being imparted to Arjuna? So Krishna calls him Anusuyave. And literally what Anusuyave means is that someone who is not envious. But a more deeper meaning is that Arjuna envious is one part of it, but it's really that he has total shraddha towards Sri Krishna and he has no reservations. Because a lot of what Sri Krishna is going to discuss here is about his greatness, his omniscience, his omnipotence, his Vaibhava. Particularly when you start to get into the chapter 10 and 11, there's a lot of greatness that's going to come out. So only someone that has sincere devotion can really imbibe such knowledge. Otherwise, it is not something that can be percepted by others. So that's the reason he's revealing this to Arjuna. He's calling him the Anusuyave. The other point in this sloka is that it's guhyatamam. So it is the secret of secrets, right? The most profound thing. So when we start to talk about guhya, I'm going to invite Srikanji to kind of help us understand what guhya means in scriptures in general, and after that we'll cycle back with what jnana and vijnana means. So Srikanji, over to you, sir.
Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you, Harishji, for giving me the opportunity on the eve of Gita Jayanti to add a little bit value and perspective to this discussion. As you said, as Harishji very nicely put out, the etymology, Guhya is secret. Another way to look at it is Hriya Guhayam, which means in the heart of the Jiva. Here again, you can think about the Dvasaparno example, where we should stop looking outside and start looking inwards. Salvation lies within is said in many places, and this is exactly what it is. And by seeking the Lord in your heart, you would understand his teachings in the right perspective. The second question we may ask is, why Guhya Bhasha? Why not just state it the way it is, like our children say, put it out there and let people make sense out of it? The answer to that is a little bit complicated. Vedas as such is not meant for everyone and their uncle. As per the swabhava of the jiva, sattvika, rajasa or tamasa, they will be able to understand under the guidance of a very learned guru the real meaning implied and meant in the Vedas and Puranas, more so in Puranas than in the Vedas. The third issue is, why did Mukhya Prana take avatar in Kali Yuga? The reason for that is at the direct instruction and orders of Paramatma, because in the interim period, a lot of misinterpretations, 21 to be exact, kubhashyas were put out, which means bad bhashyas, bad commentaries with misinterpretation, and all of that mess had to be cleaned up. And Mukhya Prana was the right person to do it. So he incarnates himself as Madhvacharya. There are other stories also which you can refer to on your own. It's not within the scope of today's discussion. So having been incarnated in the Kali Yuga, Madhvacharya wrote many many scriptures to explain. And as a consequence, one of the most potent one is called Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. Nirnaya is the word, decisive. In my understanding, all scriptural issues and things which are to be discussed or debated, you go to the mother source, which is Mahabharata. And even inside of Mahabharata, if you have any issues, you look at Mahabharata to get your nirnaya. So in a court, if you have a argument, you look at the judgment that was passed previously. So this is the judgment you look at. So having said that, in Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, chapter 9, it goes into a lot of explanation, but I'll focus on verses 137 and 138, and I'll request Shobhaji to recite it.
तस्मात् विनिर्णयग्रन्थानाश्रित्यैव च लक्षणम् बहुवाक्यानुसारेण निर्णयोऽयं मया कृतः उक्तं लक्षणशास्त्रे च कृष्णद्वैपायनोदिते त्रिभाषायो न जानाति रीतीनां शतमेव च.
Thank you, Shobhaji. Appreciate that. I would like to focus on the last sentence, and that is the key here. Tribhasha, as we all know, is three forms of communication. Yo na janati ritinam shatamevacha. It is said that in the Lakshana Granthas written by Krishna Dvaipayana, Sri Vedavyasa ji, that anyone who expounds the Vedas or tries to expound the meanings of Vedas and Puranas without knowing the three modes of communication or interpretation and 100 ways of annotation and 7 differences goes to eternal hell damnation due to the result of their ignorance or deliberate for distorting the essence of the Vedas. For the scope of this discussion, we will not get into the 100 annotations or 7 differences. If you are interested, go to Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, read verses 130 to 150, maybe even a little bit more. It's very, very illuminating, very engaging and interesting. Now let's just focus on the 3 forms of communication. Next slide, Harishji. Here we can understand the 3 forms of communication in two ways. One is Pustaka, the other one is Mastaka. What is Pustaka? Pustaka is where you interpret the Vedas and Puranas as is. You do not put your 2 cents in there and make a mess out of it. Acharya Madhva just interprets it as is, no, and as was intended. The first form of communication is called Samadhi Bhasha. A tenet or a sutra or a verse is communicated directly in a straightforward manner, which will be understood by all in a similar context. A good example for that is Nasti Narayanam Samam, Na Bhutam Na Bhavishyati. It can be also taken as a Nirvakasha Suti versus a Savakasha. That way, it is very clear as to what was being done. Now comes the crux. What is Guhya Bhasha? A Guhya Bhasha is a form of communication where only a select group of people, blessed people, are to understand it, and it's not meant for everybody. And a very classic, once again, Mahabharata, a classic example is given in Mahabharata by Dronacharya himself to Bhishmacharya Pitamaha during the Kurukshetra war, who is the commander-in-chief. When Arjuna arrives on the battlefield, his chariot ridden by Krishna, he has to communicate to the commander-in-chief that the opposition has arrived. And he says it in a very coded fashion that only these 2 knowledgeable Pandits will understand, and none of the other people surrounding have any clue. The way he says it is Nadi Jalam Keshavam Nari Ketuhu Naga Havyo Nama Nagari Sunu. To a bystander like Duryodhana and company, it'll sound like he's talking about some river, some water. Keshava, yeah, I can see him is there. Vishnu is there. Some lady, some flag, utter gibberish. And it was meant to be like that. And here, basically, Dronacharya, as learned as he was, splits the words differently to obscure the meanings from others. And the decoded message is as follows, which Bhishmacharya, as a very knowledgeable person, understands instantly. As all of you in this group very well know, that Nadija is none other than Bhishmacharya, son of the river. The goddess of the river is Ganga, Ganga Mata. Lankesha, who is Lankesha? Ravana, whose destroyer's image is on the flag. Who destroyed him? Hanumanta. Vanari, enemy of the forest, or the one who destroyed Ravana's Ashokavana. Again, Hanuman, whose image is on the Arjuna's flag, Kapidhwaja, as was shown last weekend. Drona uses this complex riddle to inform indirectly to Bhishma that the opponent has arrived, without bluntly stating it. And thus, also all in our scriptures, there are layers and layers of meaning. The more you dig, the more and more interesting and enlightened one can get. And that's what Harishi was referring to. Ultimately, you need to look at me with bhakti and devotion. Then alone, if I'm impressed, I'll give you the prasada, in which case you can follow the Pitruyana Marga, Devayana Marga versus the Pitruyana Marga, which was covered very well in previous chapters. I'm sure a lot more can be said, but I don't have time. The last way of communication is Mastaka, Darshana Bhasha. Now, what do you mean by that, Shrikandi? What that means is I sit here, like in mathematics, we have what is called, or even in statistics or in pharmacy, you make your own null hypothesis that such and such is my way of thinking, my worldview. Then I get into the scriptures and try to fit the words to my worldview. And if that doesn't fit, then I make assumptions. Visual assumptions like Sat, Pasak, Vilakshana, and so on and so forth. Which and then if that fails, I make more assumptions, which in mathematics we call infinite regression. And at the end of it, it's a confused mess. So here, our focus is on Mastaka as is. As you can see, all the scriptures should be read as is, with the help guidance of the scriptures by Madhvacharya and all our gurus. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say. Krishna Arpanamastu. Thank you, Harish ji. Naham karta, Hari karta.
Thank you, Shrikantji. That was very helpful. So that gives us a very good understanding of what Guhya Bhasha means, so that we can keep that in mind when we go through this, particularly this chapter, because there are secrets, and we need, Acharya has written Bhashya on it, and that has actually helped us unlock many of the codes that are in this chapter. So continuing on the sloka, so Jnana Vijnana Saitam Yaj Jnatva Mokshase Ashubhat. So the Jnana and Vijnana is, again, the continuation of what was discussed in chapter 7, where Jnana is the spiritual wisdom, a lot of concepts around how God is is Sarvajna, Sarvagata. It can be understood through scriptural knowledge. And the slokas, fourth sloka through the 15th sloka talk about Jnana. And then comes the spiritual wisdom in a bit more detailed, it's the Vijnana. So, and again, Vijnana has the V upasarga, which means Visheshya, it means Vishishta, it means Vilakshana. So the extraordinary part, the deeper detailed part, the exclusive aspects of it is going to come up in the middle portion of this chapter. So, and again, the focus for today is going to be until chapter 15, which is mostly the Jnana portion of what's discussed here. So moving on, so Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pravaksha Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumavyayam. So here he talks about many of the aspects of what he's going to be sharing here, right? So he talks about this this teaching is susukam. It is easy to practice, easy to understand, and easy to practice. It is superior, uttamam. It is guhyam, as we discussed earlier. It is pavitram, and it is dharmyam. And the other thing that he also talks about is that it is pratyaksha avagamam. So what does that mean? So pratyaksha means literally directly perceptible. But here, Acharya actually gives a bit more detail into what pratyaksha avagamam means, because pratyaksha is one who is present in every organ in akshu. So prati akshu, every organ, someone that is present and regulates its working. So that is the Lord who guides every sense. So your eyes, your nose, your hearing, and that Lord who guides that is the pratyaksha. And avagama is that by which anything is known. So pratyaksha avagama means the means by which the ruler of the senses is realized. So that is the deeper meaning of what that term means. And ultimately, this is all about bhakti and how bhakti can be all of these attributes, right? Easy to practice, virtuous, secret, pure, directly perceptible, and all that. And as we move forward, we'll understand how to develop that bhakti and what it is that we need to do in order to be able to gain the Lord's grace. So then the third sloka is it talks about ashraddhadhana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. So he talks about shraddha and ashraddha. So what is shraddha? So shraddha is loosely it is faith, but it's defined as a conviction based on reason and scriptural testimony in the words of the Shastra. So basically meaning that you have shraddha in what was said in the Shastra, shraddha in your Guru, and shraddha and also specifically around the supremacy of the Lord. So that is where the shraddha concept comes. And then that will actually open up the path to liberation through bhakti. Because when you have the shraddha, then you develop the bhakti, and from bhakti you get the moksha. And this is also, going back to what was discussed in chapter 4, Shraddhavan labate jnanam. So if you have Shraddha, then you gain divine knowledge, is what was discussed, when we did Chintana of chapter 4. And here Krishna is saying, well, if you're doing Ashraddha, then you won't be able to attain me. So it is almost like the corollary of what was discussed there about Shraddha and Ashraddha. And then there's also this concept of dharma and dharmyam. So dharma is, here dharma means the Supreme Lord. So whatever is spoken about him in this subject is the matter of dharma. So he who upholds the entire world is called, is what's called dharmam. So then it says that aprapya na nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. So people without this faith will repeat the cycle of birth and death. So this is, the graphic of what we had discussed earlier in chapter 8, that you start to follow the Pitriyana route of, taking birth again until you develop that faith and start to seek the Lord. So that is, so after, talking about this is when Krishna starts to talk about his nature, his all-pervading nature. And, the next few slokas, Pratibhaji is going to walk us through, a lot of, very important and interesting, concepts around the omnipresence of the Lord. So, Pratibhaji, over to you from here.
Namaskar, Harish ji. व्यासाय भवनाशाय श्रीशाय गुणराशि हृदयाय शुद्ध विद्याय मध्वाय च नमो नमः सर्व गुरुभ्यो नमः. And namaskars to all the devotees over here. And thank you, Harish ji. So here I'll be talking from the shlokas 9.4 to 10. And the main focus is on the Tata, where you have the first shloka 9.4, you says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani nachaham teshva vastitah. So that Tata is the name of the Lord. You have that Om Tat Sat, where Tat means the pervasion of the Lord. So before going to that, then the shloka 9.4, you have Mastani Sarva Bhutani, and then you have Nacha Mastani Bhutani. Everyone is in me, and no one is in me. So that looks a bit of contradictory. So then the Lord says, Pashyame Yogam Aishwaram. I'm able to do this because of my Achintya Adbhuta Shakti. So he says, witness my wonderful Ishwara Shakti, by which all beings are in me and also not in me. And how is he able to do this? Is because of that pervading. He pervades the Lord, and he's not subject to any of the contractual defects. So he is on account. The basic, what he's trying to tell is guna. He's not include, our gunas don't bother him. He like how the example of air and ether, though air and ether are in contact with various objects of the world, they do not come into contact with their qualities. Like air and sky are in fact untouched. Similarly, the Lord is a support of all things and he's present in all of them, but the material principles do not touch. So he is asanga. So our gunas, our punya, our phala, or whatever we do, he is beyond all that. So that is how he is pervasive, and how he is able to do so. It is because of his Achintya Adbhuta Shakti. And there is this Avyakta Murti also is there in that, which signifies that while the God is everywhere and the source of everything, he maintains his distinct, supreme, and transcendental personal identity, which is beyond material perception. So Avyakta, as Madhusudanji has said, the manifested form and the unmanifested form is what is meant by this Avyakta Murtina. And next slide, Harish.
Yeah, and I also want to connect one other point, Pratibhaji, that the similar idea is also there in the Isha Upanishad, where we say Isha Vasya. There's two ways to break it out. So there's Isha Vasya, which is indwelt, and then Isha Avasya, which means pervaded. So it means two very different things. Contradictory, you may say, but it is really to help drive home that point. Yeah, over to you.
And the pervasion aspect of the Lord, I just found this great book of Harikatamritasara, which is written by Sri Jagannatha Dasaru. So he talks about this pervasion aspect in Vyapti Sandhi of his Katamritasara. So this Jagannatha Dasaru, he's one of the greatest Dvaita Dasaru, and he is called as the Dasa Chatushtaya. He comes among the four, like Vijay Dasaru, Gopala Dasaru, and Venugopala Vitta Dasaru, and Jagannatha Dasaru. So he's written this great magnum opus of Harikatamritasara, and he has captured the entire essence of Sri Madhvacharya Sarvamula Grantha, and he has presented it in Kannada for the benefit of the masses. So he wanted the knowledge of this Sarvamula to reach the masses, and that is a great work that he has done. And in that Vyapti Sandhi, he has given the beautiful description about how the Lord is pervasive in different aspects. And he was a great Vedic and a Vedantic scholar in Sanskrit, and he had already experienced the inner bliss as a dasa. We don't know whether it's like aparoksha jnana, but that ananda he had got. And then he's written this Harikatamrita Sara after that, or while writing, he has experienced, we don't know, but it is such a beautiful scripture. And from there, we have taken the points about this pervasion aspect of the Lord. And the next slide. Here, the Dasaru talks about three kinds of Purushas, which we have already read in this Purushottama Yoga, where Madhusudanji has taken length about this chapter 15 on Purushottama Yoga, where the Purushottama, the ultimate, the Lord is explained. And Vyapti Sandhi here, the Jagannatha Dasaru, he says about this Purusha, the one he pervades everywhere, and he is there in our body also, Purushetihi, who is inside our body, in the Puri, and also in the Brahmanda. So the three forms of Purusha, he says that Purana Purusha, which is that Uttama Purusha, which we have seen in Bhagavad Gita chapter 15. And that is, he's called as the Parama Purusha and Purana Purusha. From him, the Mula Prakriti is generated, and then the and then the Mahatattva. As we know, the Abhimani devatas of this Mula Prakriti and Mahatattva is Mahalakshmi in the form of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, that Shri, Bhu and Durga aspect. And then the Mahatattva is the Abhimani devata is Brahma Vayu. So he has created that, and that he is called as the Purana Purusha. And then it goes to the next form. It's the same form of the Purushottama, but the second form what he took is Pravishta Rupa Purusha, where the Lord, accompanied by Mukhya Prana or Vayu, he enters the universe that he has created, and then he pervades the 24 Tattva Abhimani Devatas, and he works through them. He pervades the Brahmanda. So that part is called the Pravishta Rupa Purusha. And it's also called the Akshara Purusha. In Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 15, you have that Dvavimau Purusha Loke Sharaksha Chakshara Evacha. So the Akshara and the Shara aspect is told. And the third aspect is that Padmanabha, where he enters, the Lord dwells in all beings. He pervades the Pindanda as well. So from the Brahmanda to the Pindanda, and even before the Brahmanda is the Purushottama. He is beyond everything. So Purana Purusha, Pravishta Rupa Purusha, and the Padmanabha. So this has been told in many other Upanishads and Suktas also. Like in Ishavasya Upanishad, we have the first starting only you have it as Ishavasya Idam Sarvam, where the Lord is there. He defines the role of the Supreme Lord. And he, as we have learnt it, as Madhusudanji has told us about this Yajna Rupaka Paramatma in the Ishavasya Upanishad. So how he's a pervader. And then in Narayana Sukta also, you have Antar Bahishya Tat Sarvam, Vyapti Narayana Sthitam. And in Taittiriya Upanishad also, we have the Lord who is pervading from inside, outside alike. And that is the Lord Narayana. So he is told about it. And next slide, Harish, yeah. And then after going through this Brahmanda, Pindanda aspect, he is now talking about how the Lord is there inside our body to further understand how he's there inside the body. So we'll start from I think Madhusudanji has told a great thing about this in the journey of souls. I remember the different Swarupas that we have, different dehas that we have. One is the Swarupa Deha, Linga Sharira, Aniruddha Sharira, and then the Stula Sharira, which we can see. So, firstly, the Abhimani Devatas, they work through the Sadhana Sharira. Our Stula Sharira is also called the Sadhana Sharira because, as we know, that we've come to do the sadhana in this world, so it is called as a sadhana sharira. And how we work is through that Abhimani Devatas works through the sadhana sharira, and by whose command this Abhimani Devatas work. So they work through the command of Vayu or the Mukhya Prana. He is the regulator of all the Abhimani Devatas. So now who is giving the prerna to Vayu Devru? So that is the Bimba Rupi Paramatma. So the Bimba is the Paramatma who is inside the Jiva, the Antaryami, my Swami. That Bimba Rupi Paramatma gives the prerna to Vayu. Vayu in turn gives it to the Abhimani Devatas. And Abhimani Devata work through through our Deha, through our Sadhana Sharira. But the Moola Rupa is Narayana himself. He is the Moola Rupi of all the four Dehas, the Swarupa Deha, Linga, Aniruddha, and the Stula Deha, which is so beautifully illustrated by Harish ji. Thank you so much. And he resides in the lotus heart of all these Rupas, as well as in the Linga Sharira, Aniruddha, Stula, as well as the Swarupa. So Narayana, with all these other Vyuha Rupa, the Vyuha Rupas are the Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva. So in this view, so he sits on the throne of these Vyuha Rupas, that is in all these Dehas, without expecting anything from the Jiva. So he has given us this Dehas for us to work on our karma so that we know who we are, and then ultimately after our Aparuksha Jnana we know the Lord. So he accepts the seva from the devotees like Brahma and Rudra and others. So then he accepts the seva who are engrossed in his service, and then since he's accepting the seva from others, he calls himself as savior. And then the sevaka comes, where existing as the Antaryami in Brahma, Rudra and others, he performs the Bimba Karya and he calls himself the Sevaka. So he accepts their services through this four other similar rupas and calls himself the Savior. That Savior and the Sevaka aspect is explained. And then through that we know that how the Lord pervades everywhere in all the dehas, Narayana, and in all the four rupas of Aniruddha, Padyamna, Sankarshana, and Vasudeva. And these, all the four forms are not different, but they are just the forms of the Lord Narayana himself. Neha nanasti kinchanaha. I think it's the Katha Upanishad, I guess. It is explained there. And the next, Harish, you will go through this about the Lord's creation of
Sure. So this is when we start to talk about Sarva Bhutani Kauntaya, Prakritim Yanti Mamikam, Kalpakshaya Punastani, Kalpado Vrisajamyam. So this is where we talk about the fact that he's saying that at the end of the Kalpa, all the living beings will merge into the primordial energy, and then in the beginning of the next creation, Lord Narayana will manifest them again. So this gets into the cycle of creation and destruction. So we wanted to make sure that we give a little bit of a recap on what those 8 activities that the Lord does are. So we have creation, we have Srishti, we have Sthiti and Samhara, which is commonly understood. In addition to that, there's Niyamana and Ajnana, Jnana, Bandha and Moksha. Off of these 8 activities, creation, sustenance, destruction and regulation is something that is common for both jivas and the jadas. And then Ajnana, Jnana, Bandha and Moksha applies primarily to jivas. So that said, this 8 includes all the dispensations, of the Lord. And it's also a nod to what was discussed earlier in chapter 7. Etad yonini bhutani sarvani upadharaya aham krishnasya jagataha prabhava pralayastata. So I'm the one that is the source of creation, of the dissolution, of the sustenance. Same idea is being elaborated here. And in Shloka 8, there's also Prakritim Swama Vashtabhya Vrisjami Punah Punah Bhuta Gramamivam Kritsnam Avasham Prakriter Vashat. So this is where he talks about his material energy. They are the ones that generate the forms in according to the force of their nature. And again, in further shlokas, he talks about how he is the one that is, he as in Narayana is the one that controls Prakriti and instigates Prakriti to go through its its cycle of creation and all that. Again, just a recap, because as we talk about these activities of the Lord, these things will come up in further shlokas and in further chapters.
Yeah.
Over to you, Pratibha.
Yeah, thank you, Harish ji. That's what from the shloka 4 to 9 talks about this 8 sthitis of the attributes of the Lord, where you have this Srishti and Pralaya and the regulator and sustainer. And one more thing here is that pervasiveness, how it enters into our in our subconscious and our conscious stages. Like you have this devas and the celestial beings and the gods. They are capable of being in more than one place at the same time. Like we have Narada, the Apsaras, they're all going, the Sanatana Rishis and all, they move from one loka to the another. And due to this quality, they are called as Samsharu. Whereas human beings, animals, and they are capable of being at only in one place. So they are called as Niramsharu, says Jagannath Dasuru in that scripture. And here the Lord grants us the power of being Samsharu in our dreams, where we can inhabit it. We can inhabit any body and be present in multiple places in our dreams. We at one time we don't even know where we are, but we really feel it real. How does that happen? Again, here the Lord pervades, He consolidates the fragmented memories and experiences, and He draws us close to Him in our deep sleep. So thus Hari pervades both our conscious in our waking state as well as our subconscious mind at all times. So that is one aspect of the pervision where all it is. We would just in general tell as Brahmanda and Pindanda, but when we really get into the intricacies of where all in each cell, in each state, it is just we just feel the greatness of the Lord. That's why I feel this 8 is so clearly told. Because when we think about this charity or the aspect of the Lord, the Karuna aspect, as a human, we too all have. But this pervasion, the Achintya Adbhuta Shakti which the Lord has, is so beautifully explained here. And during creation, the Srishti, the term Visrajami is there in the shloka, as Harishji just now read it. Here, the Lord, along with Lakshmi Devi in the form of Shri, Bhu, and Durga, is responsible for the entire creation as both the Karana, the cause, and the Karya. Like, how is it that gives an example of the fabric, which is made of many threads, but the appearance as that is not of the thread, but it is of the fabric. So also, Hari is present in each and every fabric, each and every cell of this Jada Jiva, but his presence is not obvious. It is not visible, like how. And again, an example of just as the sun, it absorbs water from the sea and then the cloud, and then it pours the same water back into the sea. So the Lord also, he accepts our offerings and then he returns to us multifold, both the good and the bad. And during Laya, this Brahmanda, as we know, is made of this 24 tattvas. It just mixes and then it equalizes as all the gunas, and then it is spread over the Prakriti. The Mukta Jivas, the non-Mukta Jivas of the next Kalpa, everything else is kept in his belly, and he's the protector. And that is how he exists in everyone, and he keeps himself as everyone within himself. So that is going back to the shloka, that 4.1, how he is there in everyone and everyone is not in him. This is what it meant. So he is not, he's unattached, asanga. And the next shloka, I think Pavanji would, yeah, these are all the different places. I think Harish talk about it.
Yeah. Just to do a little bit of samanvaya of this, because this is a concept that has been discussed quite elaborately in all our scriptures. So we'll start with the Brahma Sutra. The second sutra in there talks about Janmadhyasya Yataha, meaning the Brahman is the one that's responsible and master of the entire universe, comprising of the Jadas and Jivas and all the 8 activities. And we also, hopefully in the future we'll learn more about the Taittiriya Upanishad, where in the third adhyaya, the first chapter, the first sloka is yato va imani bhutani jayante meaning one that's born, yena jatani jivanti meaning continuing to live and exist, and yet prayanti abhisamvishanti. So this is where it's actually departing. So all of that is being managed by or regulated by Brahman. Similar concept in Aitareya Upanishad, which we are going to be doing, hopefully in next year. And Chandogya Upanishad, where we have a few years back, we went through this, and here it's the same thing. Where he talks about in the beginning there was only Sat, Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asit Ekameva Dvitiya. He talks about there's only Sat in the beginning, one without the second. And then he talks about how he is the one that assumes many forms and creates all the beings in this universe. And on the right hand side of this chart, you'll also see that there are shlokas from the Chatushloki Bhagavat, where very similar concept, is that this is where Narayana is actually teaching Chaturmukha Brahma. And he's saying that Brahma, it is I who was existing before creation when there was nothing but myself. That which you see now is also I, and after annihilation, what remains is also I. So he talks about the how he is always present, manages creations and all of that. And then in the 35th sloka, he talks about yata mahanti bhutani bhuteshu chavateshnavanu. So please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos at the same time, do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I exist within everything I created, and at the same time, I'm outside of everything. Very similar to the Mastani Bhutani discussion we had, we had earlier. So, very similar concepts in our Upanishads, in the sutras, in Bhagavata Purana is the point here. So moving on. So now we get into the next section, which talks about how God remains unattached and controls Prakriti and all of that. So Pavanji, let me invite you to share your thoughts here.
Thank you, Harishi. Naranaya Paripurna Gunarnavaya Vishwodaya Sthitalaya Unnati Pradaya Gnana Pradaya Vibhuda Asura Saukya Dukkha Satkaranaya Vitataya Namo Namaste Sri Gurubhyo Nama Parama Gurubhyo Nama Srimadananda Tirtha Bhagavad Padacharya Gurubhyo Nama Samasta Gurubhyo Namaha. Oh, thank you so much, Harishji. It was an excellent start to chapter 9. As we heard from Sri Kanji, Harishji, and Prithipaji. So continuing on the shlokas in this chapter so far, we have talked about Brahman being Avyaktamurtina. He's everywhere and is a source of everything, and without any gunas. We talked about understanding the various manifestations of the Lord. The Prithipaji talked about the Vyuha forms, the Lord's role in creation, and his pervasiveness in all stages, whether it is conscious or subconscious, during creation, during destruction. So continuing on that, I think in the next few slokas, what you will hear is that again the Lord is udasina, right, meaning indifference. The indifference to Lord's effortless, unattached approach to his activities. I think Krishna talks about how he has nothing to gain from this creation and is asakta in his creation, right? And Krishna talks about how he directs the works, creating the jadas and jivas through Prakriti. He supervises and oversees the process and is not a passive witness to the Prakriti, right? But perceiver and energizing agency behind her productivity. So Mula Prakriti brings forth the world of jivas according to their karmas and swabhavas, right? So we talked a little bit about swabhavas earlier on. So swabhavas like Rajasika, like the one who are filled with indriya bhogas, or the asura type of swabhava. The tamasikas are the ones who think that satya is never in their head. They don't have satya in their head. So they are the rakshasa swabhava. And the sattvika swabhavas, these are the ones filled with jnana and satya. They are the ones who have the Devi swabhava. So these three swabhavas are important as we go through the next few slokas. And we've talked about this, in many times before. So next slide, Harishji. So this would be the interactive session. Let's see if we can get some audience to talk about these three pictures here. Who are these three characters to start with? Anybody wants to take a guess?
The first one is Shishupala.
Yes, perfect. Ananji, next. The middle one?
Middle one is this Agra Puja of Krishna?
Yeah. The middle one is Paundraka Vasudeva. Yes. And then the last one?
Dantavakra?
Yes, perfect. Yes. Yeah. So, when you think about these three characters or stories, I think if you were to, what's common, right, with all these three stories? I think one of the themes that come out of this is all the three of them are Krishna haters. There is this also, a couple of them. You think about Shishupala and Paundraka Vasudeva. They are what we call as doppelgangers, right? So they try to imitate and be like Krishna, and they think that they can. So we are also like Krishna. We can behave and act like Krishna, and we are as good or on equal as Krishna, right? So that's the story I want to expand upon in the next few slokas. So when you think about Jaya Vijaya story, and which the Dwarapalakas, right, which eventually in Mahabharata they come down as Shishupala and Dantavakra, that those two pictures that you saw. And going back to that Dwarapalaka story, Jaya Vijaya, and we talked about this, I think, in one of the Madhuji's session recently also. And the just briefly, if you go back, I think the Jaya Vijaya, they are Dwarapalakas, and because of the Sanakadi Shapa, so they had to choose to go to earth as asuras, and they take the asura avesha, and come to the earth. So this is an example where where the Sanakadi Rishis, they got angry when they were stopped by Dwarapalakas. Like, how can one have anger, right? So one of the Tamogana, how can you have this when you come to see the Lord? And and the Lord then decides that, okay, because of the Shapa, Jaya Vijaya, they had to go through this process. They had to go to the earth, and they took the quickest path of, okay, going to the earth and coming back to Lord Krishna in the most quickest form. And they were killed 3 times, right? As Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, and Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and then as Shishupala and Dantavakra. So next slide, Harishi. So in all this, I think the message here is that in the shloka 11, Krishna talks about Bhuta Maheshwaram. So Bhuta Maheshwaram, Bhuta is, and the Lord is in all jivas, Mahat, meaning there is no Adi and there is no Ananta, and He's with all gunas and guna paripurna. There's no difference in these various forms. So as we saw, in Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, whether the Lord was in the boar form or in the Narasimha, the man-lion form, or in the Krishna form, in the human form. So if there is anything, there's 2 big takeaways I want us to contemplate upon. I think from these 2 slokas here, the one, if you go back to the stories, right, they all thought that Krishna is the one with the Pancha Bhautika Sharira. And all these asuras, they felt that they can defeat this Pancha Bhautika Sharira. And they all thought that Brahman is also a Pancha Bhautika Sharira, so that's why they felt that they could defeat him. So this is where these asuras with the tamasa svabhava think that they can conquer Brahman. And I think one of the things I was listening to Bananjacharya lectures, he talks about how this is a dosha of thinking that the Brahman has Panchabhautika Sharira. So that's one big takeaway. See, the second one is that the uninformed or the ignorant, so they will think that, so it's okay to hate the Lord, right? So and you will get moksha. In this case of Shishupala, the Shishupala got moksha, and Dantavakra also got moksha. So is it okay to hate the Lord? And I think this is where the whole concept of Rajaguhya, right? This is a secret that for an uninformed, ignorant, you would think that it's okay to hate and you still get moksha, but it is that the ability to differentiate or distinguish between these various swarupas and swabhavas is what is we need to understand that deeply, and that's what helps us get over some of the ignorance that we have and understand the deeper meaning of Brahman. So just briefly, I just want to, I'm sure all of you are aware of the story of the Shishupala, right? He argues, he insults Krishna during the Rajasuya Yoga, where they were, why Agra Puja has to be done to Krishna, right? Why not any other king? Yeah, Drupata was there, Virata Raja was there, Drona, Duryodhana, everybody were there. So why did it has to be done to Krishna himself? And he insults Krishna, right? That was it 101st insult that he throws at Krishna and challenges Krishna, and that's when Krishna then uses the chakra and severs the head of Shishupala. But here is where it gets interesting, right? So when he severs the head of Shishupala, what you see is when he dies, there is this light, and you saw that in the previous slide. There is, you see that there is a light that goes back to Krishna. So that's the Sukshma Sharira of Krishna, the Sukshma Sharira of Shishupala that goes back into Krishna and attains moksha. So, and this is where it goes, this is the Dwarapalaka Jaya sadhana and what he had done and his place in this moksha that grants him, Krishna grants him the moksha based on what he has done in his past and what punya karma that he has accrued over a period of time, and based on his gradation, that's where he gets to attain that moksha. But there is also this asura avesha in him, right? Shishupala also had this asura avesha. So that asura avesha, nobody sees it. That avesha goes back to Andan Tamas. And they, I think we talked about this in previous stories where there's also different gradations of Antan Tamas. Somebody like Duryodhana, gets to experience Antan Tamas in a much more harsher form than somebody who has maybe accrued a little bit of more punya. And then, so there is this gradations of Antan Tamas that we have talked about before. But again, going back to, I think this is where, like, for an onlooker who thinks that, look how many insults Shishupala threw at Krishna and he still get moksha. So again, going back to this, is hatred a way of devotion to get moksha? I mean, you can relate this going back to Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. You can see this as well. So they had so much hatred towards the Lord. In the one things that they had so much hatred, that's a form of devotion. But that's not what we should understand from this, right? We have to tie it back to their swabhavas. There are times when when the tamoguna has prabhava on devatas, like, and just like Jaya Vijaya, and once they attain this satya sakshatkara happens, and the tamoguna goes away. And so what I wanted to impress upon is, next slide, Arishi, is if anything for us, for us to follow, I think we talk about how we have a Navavida Bhakti and all of that. So and I really like this 9 types of hatred by Acharya Madhva in the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. Something, if anything else, we have to, for me, the takeaway is that, what is it that we should not do? Like, what are those 9 types of hatred that we should be aware of? We should follow as part of our as part of our daily routine, or maybe just have it as a key things not to do. I'll just walk through this, and one is equating Sri Hari with any soul to identify the Jiva with Paramatma. Understanding Sri Hari as Nirguna, bereft of any qualities. Limiting the attributes of the Lord. Considering the Lord to be equal with other devatas like Brahma and Rudra. And understanding that there is someone superior to Sri Hari. Like seeing that indifference in various avatars of Lord. Differentiating the Lord from his organs, his actions, his attributes. And to hate Vishnu Bhaktas like Hiranyakashipu hating Prahalada. And not having faith and belief in Vedas and scriptures, and accepting only certain parts of the Vedas and denying the other parts, are also kind of hatred towards Vishnu. So I felt that this is kind of like a nine types of hatred that we should always remember as not to do. And if you think about it, these are the things many of these Asura Avesha Rakshasas have done, and it's kind of a learning for all of us as to what are those things that we should not do. So having said that, so again, I feel that we all have a swabhava, right? We get influenced by, whether rajasika or tamasika gunas throughout a journey, and we got to learn to add more of the sattvika punya as we go, through our daily routine. So I think there are a couple the couple more stories I think I want to add to this is one of the Ajamila. I think we all know about this. Ajamila is one where he goes from the Satvika Swabhava to Rajasika Swabhava, and due to his Indriya Bhoga, but at the end the transformative power of remembering God and the potential for liberation through he accidental utterance of Narayana towards the end of his life. So the another example is of Bhimasena, right? Developing compassion towards Dhritarashtra. Think about Dhritarashtra, how much hatred Dhritarashtra had throughout his life. In Dhritarashtra, being responsible for death of all the kings, he committed great sin. He was immersed in material pleasures, right? So even towards the end, he had so much hatred towards Bhimasena that he wanted to kill Bhimasena even towards the end. So so this excessive, so I think Acharya Madhva talks about how the harshness shown by even towards the end. How does Dhritarashtra attain in spite of all these bad things he has done, how does he think about attaining how do we get vairagya in him, right? So the Bhima, Bhimasena talks about how he has to do tapas and to sprout the seed of vairagya in him. And how should Dhritarashtra be? What should he do, having done all these bad things? What should he do in the future for him to at least be on the path towards attain his own loka? So giving up the attachment of hatred, worship, doing tapas of Hari and worshipping, and you shall become pure. So here is where Vidura talks to Dhritarashtra, and then Dhritarashtra gives up hatred towards Bhima and attains vairagya. Right? He started upavasa as a means of devotion. So this is where I think if you were to think about what does a true devotee, how does what should be the nature of Sri Hari's devotees? And here is where we talked about Mahatmanas, right? The Devi Sampad, the one whose swabhavas are filled with gnana and satya, the beaming with brightness. They are the Mahatmanas, the Satvika swabhavas. And what are the other? Satatam kirtayantayanam. So it is kirtanas, right? The way to sing devotional songs, the way to have the most of the kirtanas, Purandaradasa, or we have so many of saints in our history that talk about kirtanas as a ways of remembering, chanting, hearing, and learning about the Lord. Next slide, Harishji. So what are the other methods of worship, right? We talk about meditation, yajna, worship of deities, kirtana, worship in the various avatars in various forms, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva. So all of these process and people, the ways of how to worship, Sri Krishna talks about this in the next few slides, next few slokas, sorry. That's it. Krishna Pramastu. Back to you, Harishji.
Thank you so much, Pavanji. So, as we wrap it up, I was, thinking through all the different ideas that we went through, and my parents actually chant the Vishnu Sahasranama every day, and when I hear the Falashruti, I felt like a lot of the things that we discussed are, well covered there. So, yeah, I just thought it'll be a good way to kind of, end. This session by just talking about some of the key Falashruti things from Vishnu Sahasranama that that are so relevant here. So, Devasya Chandrarka Nakshatram Kham Disho Bhurmaho Dadhi Vasudevasya Viryena Vidhritani Mahatmana. So the heavens consisting of moon, sun, stars, space, directions, oceans, all of these are held by laws of the great Vasudeva. And then Sasurasura Gandharvam Sayakshoraga Rakshasam Jagat Vashe Vartadedam Krishnasya Characharam. So the entire Jagat consisting of movable and immovable, the Devas, the Asuras, the Rakshasas, the Gandharvas, everything exists under the control of Sri Krishna. And then Indriyani Mano Buddhihi Sattvam Tejo Balam Dhritihi Vasudeva Smakanyahu Kshetram Kshetrajnya Evacha. The senses, the mind, the intellect, sattva, splendor, strength, resolve, the kshetra, which is the body, and the knower of the body are nothing but manifestations of Vasudeva. Then Rishayaf Pitaro Deva Maha Bhutani Dhatavaha Jangaman Jangaman Chedam Jagannarayanodbhavam. The sages, forefathers, gods, great elements, minerals, this entire Jagat consisting of movable and immovable things all have come from Narayana. And then finally, Eko Vishnur Mahadbhutam Pratak Bhutani Anekashaha Trinlokavapya Bhutatma Bhumte Vishwabhukavyaya. So the Lord Vishnu is the one great being, the cause of this entire universe. He created all the beings, and many and varied, pervading all the three worlds as Paramatma of all these beings, and at the same time being changeless. He protects and experiences and consumes this entire world. So this kind of summarizes, everything that we talked about through the 15th shloka within chapter 9. So before I wrap it up, I just wanted to invite either Neetaji or Madhuji to talk about next week, and then we can open up for any questions. Or do you want to do? Let's do Q&A first, and then we can open up for. We'll do Q&A first, and then we'll talk about next week.
Thank you very much, Harish Ji. Wonderful, wonderful. And you guys kept very much in time. So that was super. So 1 hour, 10 minutes. So can I request Pavanji, Shrikantji, and Pratibhaji also to unmute their audio and video, please, before we open up for Q&A. So we got another 15-20 minutes to kind of contemplate on the first few verses of Rajavidya and Rajaguhya Yoga. So open for discussion. So perhaps maybe I could just start off, Harish Ji. The first few verses in this particular chapter, everything is contradictory. He will say something I'm doing, and then he'll say I'm not doing something. I'm not doing that. So I just wanted to pick up two examples here. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Then opposite. Nacha aham teshu avastitaha. So in the first thing he has said, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. I am in everything, he has said. Okay. And then immediately after some time he will say, Nacha aham teshu avastitaha. I am not in everything. I am in everything, but I am not in everything. Matstani sarva bhutani. Okay. All jivas and jadas are in me. Nacha matstani bhutani. All jivas and jadas is also not in me. Okay, so I think one of the things our Srimad Acharya and all our other gurus also say here is that how we understand the opposite. So nacha aham teshu avastitaha, nacha matstani bhutani doesn't mean he is not there. The view of that is I am not attached, number one. Number two, I am not dependent. I am the independent being. I am as an independent being, Maya tatam idam sarvam, and Matstani sarva bhutani. Whereas I am not dependent on any of these things. I am an independent being and I am not attached to anything. So that contradictory stuff, I think it brings about independence and dependence, as well as attachment versus non-attachment. I just wanted to share. And it'd be lovely to have others' view on this, because Nacha karmani limpanti, immediately he says nothing binds to me. Why on earth nothing binds to me? Because he is not attached to it, and he just does it for our benefit, right? That's what the sutra, the Brahma Sutra keeps talking. Na prayojanavatvat vaishamya nairganye nase pekshruta tata hi darshayati. Na prayojanavatvat. He has no use. It's only for the jiva. So that idea comes along. So I just wanted to remind all of us that, and this is from my own notes from Bananji Govindacharya's, wonderful, wonderful lectures in this Gita that he has done, as well as Gita Bhashya and Gita Vivriti, is about the dependence and independence and attachment and non-attachment. That is what I wanted to share. Anandji?
First of all, thank you, Ji, and thank you to Harish Ji and team. What a way to start off with this Rajavidya, Rajaguhya. the initial 15 verses, you made it very clear as to why it's called Raja Guhya. And that's what Madhuji was just saying. There are some contradictory things, Matsthani, Nacha Matsthani, and other things, which probably has a Guhya meaning and not to be taken as it is. And the other comment I wanted to make was about Pavanji made it very clear that when he said Sarvabhuta Maheshwaram, which is such a sin to think of that all the avatars are different avatars. When in 15th chapter, in one of the shlokas, it says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. When he says that, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, it's not his amsha in jivas. It's a bhinna amsha in jivas. Whereas all the avatars, they have got a swarupa amsha of Bhagavan. So there are two aspects to it. When in 15th chapter he says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, it does not mean that it is the amsha of the Lord himself in the souls like us. It is a different amsha. It's a bhinna amsha. Whereas in all his avatars, it is a swarupa amsha. That's why that Sarva Bhuta Maheshwaram is such an important word. I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
The other verse also I wanted to pick up was Prakritim Mamikam. That particular verse also becomes very interesting. Prakritim Mamikam, my Prakriti. Okay, so some folks also says, the energy of the Lord. Energy of the Lord is the same as him, and all those things we hear. But Prakritim Mamikam means Prakriti. There are two Prakritis. One is Chetana Prakriti, one is Mula Prakriti. Mula Prakriti is material thing, and Chetana Prakriti is Shri Tattva. So here Krishna has very clearly said, Prakritim Mamika means these two guys are under my control. Shri Tattva is my consort. Mula Prakriti is under my control. Just because they are under their control doesn't mean that they become them. And that is also some other thing that we keep hearing, that Lord's higher energy and lower energy. What is higher energy and lower energy? That is a sin. That is a hatred to Paramatma to say Lord has got higher energies and lower energies. And I've heard, I do see people talking about Lord's lower energy is this, higher energy is this. So as Pavanji was mentioning, we need to be very, very mindful of those 9 points of hatred to Paramatma, is also to see that internal difference, that this guy has got higher energy and lower energy. So again, my plea is never to fall into the trap and stick to what our Acharya has said about the 9 things that we need to avoid. Was another point I wanted to pick up. Thanks.
Namaskaram, Madhuji. One comment I wanted to make.
Yeah.
In the last parts of the shlokas that we were discussing today, Satatam Kirtayanto Mang. And I think he said Santatam Chinte Nantam. So the Acharya is sort of like complementing what the Bhagavan is saying. Because the Lord is Ananta, even if you do Santatam Chintaye Nantam, you will never exhaust his attributes. You will never exhaust his attributes. And then now here the Bhagavan Krishna is saying Satatam Kirtayantoma. So if he had said Satatam Karmayantoma, or doing is more difficult than at least talking about him. Doing is more difficult than the Kirtana that is associated with it. If you cannot even say the glory of the Lord, how are you going to act on the glories of the Lord? So the first part is saying it out aloud. So the Lord is basically saying, sing my glories, so then you can contemplate my glories, and then you can then act on my glories and understand it. So it was like a very nice complementary set that Mukhya Prana and Krishna did, which is Satatam Kirtayantoma and Santatam Chintayanto. So I thought it was very, very nice. Like every single word that the Acharya has written is sort of like a complimentary, and so I thought it was very interesting and very nice. So wanted to just point that out.
Thanks, Jivji. Actually, that is the Susukam part, right? This Kirtayanto is much easier than doing the work.
Yeah. So if you cannot even talk about it, how are you going to do about it? So begin with the talking about it, begin with the affirmation, and then you can be sort of like going out and doing things associated with it. So it was very, very nice. So it was very well brought out.
Thank you very much, Venkat. The other one also, Venkiji, thanks for that. So the other one I also wanted to pick up was the Shraddha view of what is Shraddha and what is Ashraddha. Shraddha. So just wanted to again remind all of us from, of course, our acharyas, what they've said about Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. Faith of what? An excellent example that is given there is in this universe, there is lots that we don't know. There is only a minute fraction of what is out there in the universe that we know. The majority of it we do not know. Just because we do not know does not mean that they do not exist. Yeah. Just because we do not know does not mean that they do not exist. So the first concept of Shraddha is to understand that there are so many things in this universe that I do not know, but that does not mean they do not exist. Similarly, I am not able to see Paramatma right now because of my limitations with all my, indriyas and so on. But that does not mean Paramatma does not exist. So that is the first Shraddha that we need to have. And then, of course, all other Shraddhas then they flow smoothly afterwards. So that is the first Shraddha that Acharyas, bring forth and remind us of that. That is another idea that I wanted to share. Anandji?
Just a comment or probably a question. When you defined Vijnana, I know Venkiji has done a very good session on Jnana, Vijnana. So, I know you also quoted Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya there, the Mangalacharana. So, Sadagamaika Vigneyam. So, Vijnana is from Sadagamas, and we interpret like that, isn't it? So, Vijnana is from Sadagamas. Sadagamaika Vigneyam. Any comments on that?
Sure. Yeah, Venkiji, go for it.
Well, the way we think about that is it is a tantra nyaya. So part of realizing the vijnana is sadagamaika vijneyam, meaning the Lord is known only from sadagama. And the second part is agama eka, meaning Vishnu only is the main purport of the agama. So it is front and reverse. So that is the trick that the Acharya has done there, which is Sadagamaika Vidneyam, meaning the Agama is the only one that will teach Vishnu, and Vishnu is the only entity that is taught in the Agamas. And so therefore, because the Vedas are with one voice praising the Lord, you should then know that the Lord is the most supreme of all. And then the Vishesha is Samyak, right? Samatita Ksharaksharam, Samyak Atita Ksharaksharam. So he is in a very comprehensive way above the Kshara and Akshara, and there is nobody higher than him. And so I think that is basically what I would say is the Vijnana part of it, which is not only knowing the Lord is supreme, but having known the Lord is supreme, how is the Lord supreme part of it? The how of what? I think is what I would think is like an iterative process for us to understand the jnana and the vijnana is how I think about it.
To add to Venkiji's super comments is, Sadagama, Sadagama. So there is another one there. So there are so many Duragamas that are out there without naming them. There are lots of Duragamas. Acharya has said Sad Agama, and he has also said Sada Agama. So one is with Sad Agama alone, and the other one is Sada Agama. Only through Agama alone you can know, can have that knowledge of Vishnu, that in the Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya. And then another interesting thing, etymology. It's an interesting part of our discussions, right? Etymology. Jnana. Okay, what is jnana? What is the etymology of jnana? Bannanji Govindacharya gives the etymology of jnana. We say jnana, jnana, vijnana and all that. What is jnana? Okay. Bannanji says jna plus ana. Jna, J-N-A, jna plus ana is jnana. Okay. Jna, sarvajna. Okay. Sarvajna is Vishnu. So he is called jna in that equation. Ana means anacheshtayam. Yeah, anacheshtayam. That is going towards him, doing an action towards him, so that you know this nya is Jnana is one novel etymological interpretation that Bananji has given. And then Vigna is, of course, his Sarvajñatva is Vilakshana, Vishishta, Vishesha, and it is completely different from Lakshmi's. Lakshmi is also in some sense is Sarvajna, but with less clarity, right? Spashtatvena Vedaha, as Pramana Lakshana is defined. Lakshmi is Jnana and Vishnu is Jnana, is that Spashtatva, there is a difference and so on. So Jna, Ana, Vigna, and Ana is another interesting etymology that has been given by Bananji from his works that again I wanted to share. Yeah. And then, of course, Acharya in the very next verse in Vishnu Tattvanirnaya, he's of course, he's given the list, isn't it, for all of us? What is that Sadagama? He has given the list. The other one, yes, I wanted to just share these very interesting thoughts is around what Pavanji was talking about, the very first haters, the number one haters. Okay, I like that number one hater example because in that number one hater equaling Sri Hari with any soul, identifying Jiva with Paramatma, yeah, is a very, very, very important one, and the lesson that we can learn from Hiranyakashipu. Okay, so what did Hiranyakashipu said? Mad anyaha ishwaraha kaha. That is what he said to his son Prahalada. Mad anyaha ishwaraha kaha. Who else is an Ishwara than me? Is what our Hiranyakashipu said came, and that is why this whole Narasimha Avatara happened, isn't it? That is why when you do the when you do the Mangalacharana sloka of Srimad Acharya, in all the Mangalacharanas, he always adores Narayana. Okay, but only when he does one particular Khandana text against this Jiva Brahma Aikya, he says Narasimho Akila Ajnana Mata Dvanta Divakaraha Jayati. He will bring in Narasimha there. Why? Because our Hiranyakashipu said Mad Anyaha Ishwaraha Kaha, and that is why Narasimha he brings. So this is a beautiful stuff again, illustrating how dangerous the first haters of Brahman can be. And unfortunately, some of us don't realize this, and we can only hope and pray that God bestows some jnana onto them, and then they can make a U-turn and do the right things. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts to share here? Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So if there are no other questions, shall we go to the last slide? Harish ji, yeah. So yeah, thank you very much. Again, I wanted to thank Harish ji, Pratibha ji, and Pavan ji for making an amazing start to chapter 9. Shaptarshi, yeah.
Hi, Madhusanji. I have a small question regarding that Acharya when he is doing the Mangala Charana in the Mayavada Khandana. He is invoking Lord Narasimha. But the Advaitic friends, who think that Jiva Brahma Aikya, even though they think in that way, but still some of them are great devotees, right? Like, but in the case of Hiranyakashipu, he was not a devotee at all, and he was thinking himself as a god, and he was doing some destructions across the world. Like nobody was happy on his presence. So I think isn't I personally think isn't the Acharya is going a bit strong into this point, that it just came to my mind, like thinking in this way, like what is your thought about it? I just want to know.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Shaptarshi ji. Anybody wants to share their thoughts here, please? Venki ji?
Namaskaram, sir. I was about to say that, but I thought we were running out of time. But Saptarshi ji, he brought up a really good point. The Advaitins, Mayavadins, they actually reframe the entire Saptamaskandha in favor of Advaita by quoting the Narasimha Avatara, which is kind of like mind-boggling, really. So when you think about it, what they are saying is that I only think that it is something like something inner into Hiranyakashipu is coming outer or something like that. And if they say that, then that would be like a sort of like a reverse of Bimba Pratibimba, where Bhagavan is Bimba and the Jiva is Pratibimba. They are like saying the fear attribute of Hiranyakashipu is coming out and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very nice and pertinent comment, because there are a lot of Narsimha stotras actually written. Narsimha Karavalambana stotra is there, and a lot of other stotras have been written with very, very great devotional context. But I don't know how that thing is threaded. The Narasimha Avatara as supporting Advaita. So that was my comment, because there is a lot of very devotional stotras that have been written on that by a lot of people.
I just recalled one incident, just wanted to share. And I think many of you know about Sridhar Swami. He was a Shankaracharya of the 14th century, and he was after Acharya, he was the first one who wrote the entire commentary on the Bhagavata Purana. And actually, he was a very great devotee, even though he was from Advaiti school. And in Fadyavali, which is composed by Jiva Goswami of Gaudiya school, what happened after his retirement, he went to Kashi and he was worshipping Narsimha Dev every day. And there was his Advaiti colleagues who was every day somehow taunting him that what happened to you, Sridhar Swami? You know the Jiva Brahma Aikya, but you are worshipping Narasimha Dev. Is anything wrong with you? Like, are you okay? Kind of like they are taunting him. And even though he was an Advaiti, he made this comment in his stotra that I don't recall the Sanskrit one. I just can say in English that throughout my life I keep worshipping this Brahman, okay, who stayed neutral, okay, like because he is indifferent for everyone. And what this Nirguna Brahman has done for me. But when I chanted your name, Narasimhadev, all of the sins I accumulated throughout my lives is gone. So even though he himself is an Advaiti, but he being in that school, he is indirectly attacking his colleagues from the same school, and like who. So basically, you can say that there are people in that school who has this sentiment that okay, we are equal with God. So basically, worshiping God actually it is just like okay, it has some practice, but it does. If you don't do it, it doesn't matter. They have some kind of sentiment. So I'm not saying all of those, but many of those, maybe many of them, maybe.
Yeah, Shaptashi, thank you for those interesting thoughts. So I think where we leave it at this is it all boils down to Jiva's Swabhava. So there are Jivas of various types. Yeah, not all Jivas are the same. There are Jivas of various types. There are the Rajasic, Tamasic, and the Sattviks, and the various mixtures of these. So there are Jiva Ganaha, Hare Anucharaha, Nichocha Bhavangataha. So there are various types of souls. The Sattvika Jivas always have Yatartha Jnana, whereas tamasika souls always have ayatartha jnana or viparita jnana, and based on their own swabhavas they find their own destinations. The sattvika swabhavins will hopefully eventually go through the devayana and reach the Lord's feet, and the tamasika swabhavas with viparita jnana will eventually go to andatamas. So I think at the end of the day, we just need to stick to the constitution of the universe, which is that there are different types of souls, and the democracy of the universe is as you sow, you reap; as you think, you become. So if one wants to do an upasana of the nothingness of Brahman, then you become nothing. Yeah. If one wants to worship Brahman as Gunapurna and Doshadura, then hopefully in moksha you will achieve your own purnatva based on your own capacity. So that is what our system always talks about is the democracy of the universe. So we just leave it at that. And some folks, as the example that you gave is very interesting. So we actually do not know what their true swabhava is, and it is probably the true swabhava of that person that comes out in the later part of their lives. So we'll just leave it at that, but very, very interesting discussion, particularly around the number one rank among the haters of Brahman as described in Mahabharata Tatparya. So on that note, thank you very much, Harish ji, Pavan ji, Pratibha ji, for taking us through an excellent introduction to chapter 9. Look forward to next week and the week after. So here is a brief introduction about what's going to happen next Sunday, and and the team will actually send out a proper pamphlet with regards to how the day is going to look like, possibly later today or tomorrow. The Gita team will send out that information. But just remind that the first thing to say is before Upanishad Chintana or Gita Chintana happens, 30 minutes before that, for the past 2 years, we've had Gita recitation practice. And this has been led expertly by very many within the Hindu Knowledge Academy group. To name a few, Neetaji, Veenaji, Nalini Pratibhaji, Kusumji. There are so many of them, along with their male consorts who have been very, very helpful in actually running this over 2 years. So it so happens just before today's class, Veenaji and Nalini completed the 18th chapter. So we have actually today completed 18 chapters of Gita recitation. Every week we have done 10 verses over 2 years. So that's an amazing achievement, I think, amazing feat. Dedication from all of us to learn this. And one of the key take home from that is we all now feel confident to pick up any chapter from the Gita and just pick a verse and then recite it, let alone understand it. That is an entirely different game, but at least we should be able to recite it with confidence. And I think that is what the team has actually given us, is to recite that with confidence. Now, the timing is such that we finish today. Tomorrow is actually officially Gita Jayanti. And then the Sunday, we are going to, as a Hindu Knowledge Academy team, many of us have volunteered to recite the whole of the Gita. So Harish, the program actually starts at 11:30 UK time, so which should be manageable time in the US, I think, because we got lots of US satsangis and satsangis from India and other places also reciting on this. So it starts at 11:30. And 18 chapters, as I said, it could be one husband and wife doing it, part A and part B of each chapter, or others joining in and doing it, and so on. So I would strongly advise and plead our satsangis to join at 11:30. Even if you can't do for the whole 2.5 hours, even if you're here at least for your favorite chapter, you may want to just sit there and listen to it. It should give us a lot of good karma points if we come and recite and listen to Gita. So that is from 11:30, and assuming that it will go on from 11:30 to 2:30, thereabouts, 2:30. So 2.5 hours to 3 hours it probably will take to recite 18 chapters. Then after that we have a half an hour of rest. And then at 3 o'clock, we start our guest lecture by Purna Prasad ji from New York, I believe. And he is going to talk to us about essence of chapter 9 and also focusing on slokas 16 and 19. And then the following week, we will take up the rest of the chapter 9 led by Harish ji and so on. So Harish, do you want to, I think you briefly showed us the slide. So you wanted to introduce the expert speaker for next week?
Yeah, for sure. So, many of you may have heard of Dr. Purna Prasad. I know some of us actually do join some of his satsangs. I know Pratibha ji and Jagdish and others do. I'll give a more detailed introduction when he's in person next week. But suffice to know that he's a very eminent in three things. One is that he's been Mridangam player, since a very young age, and he comes from this, Haridasa family. In addition to that, he has been learning under the tutelage of Baranjay Govindacharya for many years. So he's he have a lot of things to share from his experience there, and professionally, he's been working in robotics and and AI in clinicals. That's what his company does right these days. So really looking forward to it. So do not miss next week, 3 o'clock. I think you're in for some good discussion there as well.
Fantastic. Yes. Look forward to all this. So, we'll see you again next Sunday. But before we close today's session, Harish, did you want to recite Om, and then we can close? Thank you very much, Harish ji, and
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Take care, everyone. See you next Sunday. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.